do this show, subjects like Project 2025, not to take any kind of stance pro con. Complicated document, 992 pages, some of which I agree with, some of which for me, what I agree with or what I don't agree with. That's not my part of this, and that's not what I'm doing. But there is a lot of bad information out there. Craig is going to hit some of the specifics, but what if I told you all something to think about before I roll the opening? What if I told you all that the organization that created this has been around since 1973, since the Nixon era, and Mandate for Leadership, which is the 992 page document that everybody's screaming about, is the 11th edition of Mandate for Leadership. And it was implemented heavy during Reagan, and it has never really stopped. So this has been an influential entity. It's been an influential document going all the way back to the 1980s. And Craig, I don't know too many people, and nobody in the mainstream media or the mainstream political, who are saying that.
No, they're not. That's one of those things. It's like the typical thing. They found a boogeyman and they ran with it without actually doing what they should have done. This is kind of like, it's not going to be as bad as the Dan Rather, George Bush report. But the problem is like they ran with it, and once you get yourself on record, and then you realize, you're like, oh crap. And and we'll talk about these things, and that's what I said. It's one of those, they should have taken the time, looked through it, and it's easy to find the things that hey, we don't agree with this.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point of this. Is this was a policy proposal. Everybody's acting like this was passed in the middle of the night, and now this is U.S. law.
No,
and that's not how this is. This is just a group presenting. Right. This is what we'd like to see in the next president. Yeah. That's what it is.
So tonight, my piece is that I am going to share the history of this thing. I'm going to give you some statistics about Mandate of Leadership. Project 81, Project 77. All these different, not 77, 81, and then forward and forward and forward. The percentages are not 100% of adoption. I think, Craig, some of the things are Overton windows. You talk about dismantling X, and you have no intention, and it's not politically possible to dismantle X. But you're speaking your mind to your constituents, because it's a very specific constituency. We're going to talk about that tonight, too. That's how it works. And you're not going to get your way, so you start trading stuff. Yep. So anyway, let's roll the opening real quick, and then we're going to come in. We're going to dive in. I hope that we have piqued your interest for what's going to go on tonight, because there is some bad information out there, which kind of makes me angry too. So here we go, folks. Yep.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon, the preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
And really, this is a journey into the right-wing realms. And, I was just having a little side conversation here with Charles, who said this has been around since the Powell Manifesto. Folks, this has really been around since the Reagan era. The Heritage
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Foundation and Mandate for Leadership built Reagan era foreign policy, economics. You'll hear. I mean, Gorbachev knew who these guys were and was upset with Reagan because he felt like Reagan was listening to them too much. So,
Yep.
Joe Redmile says, I had a terrible time getting tonight's broadcast to play. Joe, I know you've been having internet problems. I reset our internet. I haven't gotten any low signal things. So hopefully, I don't want to say hopefully it's on your end, but you know what I mean. Hopefully nobody else is having a problem. But Craig, I want to set it up with this. And if you want to make some comments on it, great. And then I'll take us quickly through the history and you interdict as you want to. But first of all, this was really spotlit at the DNC and on the September 10th debate. That's where this was hit home. This thing was unveiled a year and a half ago. That's the first thing to know, folks, that they went public with this document in April of 2023. And nobody has really said a word about it because nobody ever says a word about the Heritage Foundation documents. Okay, so that's the first thing. So Craig already sort of teased that. This is a pointed thing that they're using as a very specific weapon, and not everything they're telling you. Harris's new commercial, right, Craig? What are some of the things you've seen that commercial, right?
I think
I don't
so.
want to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just trying to think. I mean, I've seen a couple of them. I'm not sure which.
Okay.
Was it the IVF? Is that one? Was that part of it?
No, the one that I saw. So I'll tell mine. You tell yours. The one that I saw, they talk about cutting Social Security. And
yes.
Folks,
Okay.
they mentioned Social Security 10 times in the document. I have a PDF on my desktop. Not once does it mention cutting Social Security. So if you're going to have a beef with this, and anybody who's not in the right-wing spectrum portion of the political spectrum is going to have beefs with things that are on this. Like I said, I have some beefs with a good number of the things on here. Get them right. And Craig, you have one.
Well, no, I was going to say I think that was the same one. It's one of this week's been crazy. I'm trying to keep my mind straight here. But it's that one. Like, if I remember right, that was one thing I looked in. This is a common tactic that happens during politics types where they'd say, if they're going to cut this, they're going to cut this.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever cut anything. The only thing that's cut is the amount that's increased. So when they talk about like they're going to cut Social Security, they're saying instead of a 5% increase across the board of the budget, they're saying, no, we're only going to do 2%.
Yeah.
It still went up. I go, it's not going from this level and then all of a sudden it gets chopped off. Nobody is undercutting themselves. It's
right.
Sorry, guys. Well, part of the same bird. The wings of the same bird.
Right. And to link onto that, like another car on the train, political platforms are that, right? Everybody complains, oh, the candidate promised XYZ. Well, that was their wish list. But then there's this whole thing called checks and balances. There's a whole thing called Congress. There's a Supreme Court who steps in and interdicts. That is the political process. So nobody gets their wish list. Probably it would be scary if any politician actually got their wish list. So let's go through the history. I don't want to say let's try to have fun tonight, but let's remember that this is a political tool that's being highly distorted. And I say, don't distort it, report the serious problems so that everybody can have a debate about it. I also want to explain tonight along the way why I think that Trump is lying when he says, I don't know who did it. I don't know who these people are. But the fact that he doesn't necessarily want to have anything to do with it, Trump is a megalomaniac who doesn't want anybody to tell him what to do. And these people do not like Donald Trump, and we will talk about that more tonight. So that's the kind of things that's my wish list for tonight.
And I posted the link.
I don't have a Congress to answer to. What's that?
Yeah. Now I posted a link for everybody. If you want, like I said, when people see the chat, you can go to this one. Because this is one of the ones I did some research based off of. Vox this is not a conservative site. So for anybody that's, saying in this, Vox is notoriously leans left. And this one was actually a fairly fair, look into Project 2025. So I encourage, to check this one out. I mean, I'm going to give props to this guy. This is Andrew Prokop, I think is how you say his name. And this was done July 30th, 2024.
Awesome. Yeah, when it first really started to come into the limelight. So, Charles says the logic is if they lock in low upper class taxes, then there can be no balanced budget without extreme cuts. That's part of it. But also, let's always remember tonight that this is conservative Republican Reaganomics trickle down policy. That if you cut taxes for the wealthy, they're going to invest more money, and it's going to come down, and it's going to benefit everybody. So this is the problem with the two-party system. This is a manifestation of it. So in 1973, this is the Nixon era, a man named Edwin John Feulner Jr., Feulner Jr., and Joseph Coors of the Coors Beer family create a conservative version of the Brookings Institution. There is always going to be balance anywhere on the spectrum, be it a candidate. Why did Mitt Romney all of a sudden become sort of like a moderate Republican? Because he wanted to run for president, and that's where the spot was. Let's not have to 80% of what Trump says is the same reason that shock jocks say what they say, because there's an audience for what he says. And when he finds out that his poll numbers go up, he says more of it. So I think we need to really be adults.
Yeah, when you have somebody that lives by the motto, any press is good press. Like you said, you're going to say, because it's one of those things. Are they talking about me? Good. I'm in the news. Like I said, they're not talking about the other person.
Right. That's exactly. So there you go. Yeah. Powell said the same in 71. That's absolutely right. So anyway, Joseph Coors contributes $250,000 to get this off the ground. They feel like they're losing ground. Nixon is way too liberal for these guys. Keep that in mind too. They think that the Republican Party's gotten way too liberal under Nixon. He's kowtowing. He's doing too much compromising. So they do this. Now, Feulner Jr. serves as president from 77 to 2013, but then he comes back 2018. Because I think they needed a core guy, because you're dealing with Donald Trump and you're dealing with a carousel of cabinet members, chiefs of staff. They can't keep people because Trump is Trump and he doesn't like these guys and he doesn't like the rope around his arms. Okay, so when you look into who Heritage Foundation trustees are, these guys are at Chase Manhattan Bank, Dow Chemical, General Motors, Mobil, Pfizer, Sears, the big players. So there you go. Craig, I did not find any connections with the Koch brothers and people like that. I don't think, keep in mind that this is a private foundation. You don't have to go public with who's giving you money if you don't want to. Yeah,
no, I didn't see anything that connected them either, but it's one of those, this is right in the ideals that they espouse too. So I wouldn't be surprised if in somewhere there was some backing from them during this part, but yeah, I didn't see anything that directly tied them to it.
Yeah. So Charles isn't going to be an adult until Marjorie Taylor Greene backs down. So that's okay, Charles. Have fun. Be childlike, but not childish. Try to be childlike and not childish. There you go. Because she ain't going to change. January of 1981, the Heritage Foundation publishes the first mandate for leadership. So the first version of Project 2025 is actually Project 1981. It's a comprehensive report aimed at reducing the size of the federal government. And when I grew up and I was a young Republican and I was all about, give the power to the states, give the right to the states. When I was in college and just out of kind of a Reagan guy, before I really kind of went independent by the time HW was in office. That's when this came out. And that was a big thing. Less government, less bureaucracy. Okay, not bad. So keep in mind, folks, 10 editions of this thing have been published since. They're making out like this is a ghost that, this specter was born, or this is from some kind of unholy working, some kind of sex magic or something. This thing was born. It absolutely wasn't. So public policy guidance to the Reagan administration, they made more than or about 2,000 specific policy recommendations to the Reagan administration. The Reagan administration, after Reagan read it, after he gave it to every single member of his cabinet to read, they adopted 60% of those 2,000 recommendations. 60%. So this isn't setting the broad-based every single piece of policy either. 60%. by the end of Reagan's first year. It did help to develop and advance the Reagan Doctrine, which was anti-communism foreign policy initiative. But remember, he was brought in to be that guy. So there's really not a surprise that there's an initiative. Now, Reagan ran into trouble while he was trying to play nice with Gorbachev in Moscow in 1988. Gorbachev called him out on it. He said, you are listening to this Heritage Foundation way too much and is causing problems for us. So that shows you how much power these guys have had for a very long time, Craig. If a foreign leader's going, maybe you shouldn't listen to these guys quite too much if you want to make progress. They supported the Ballistic Missile Defense System in 1983, the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. Craig, after the first of the year, I think we got to do an episode on SDI.
Yeah,
Like
why not?
The 60 scientists who mysteriously died, who were associated with the project and all. Not funny. That would be a really good sinister mystery. It became the top defense priority. So these guys are, but that was the Reagan era, right? It was the neocons. It was like, let's go, guys. 12 years of this. So get into George H.W. Bush. 1991, they're the leading proponents of Operation Desert Storm. Bush admin agreed with 6 of the 10 domestic budget reform proposals. That's 60% again, Craig. They're running like 60%. Okay, so 2/3. Okay. That they proposed, that was in Mandate Leadership 3. So that would be Project 1991. George W. Bush, moving forward now, post 9/11, HF supports wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the war on terror. Most people did, right, Craig, in Congress on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
There were very few people that. So, and the HF did go against their opposition, which was maybe a tactical mistake. There just wasn't that opposition. I mean, people were angry.
That seems to be. It's just it seems to be one of those things. Is they easily get pulled into the rope-a-dope. It's one of those things where if they had just sit back and let stuff be up, but they can't help themselves. It's like they've got to respond. And it's just like, no, just not say anything, just let it go. But it's like they can't. They've got to get their comment back, and it never seems to work.
Yeah. Tanya said she was watching the show and it threw her back to the beginning all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So she was back at the intro. So I don't know, folks. Hold on. It's a bumpy ride. Our signals, Craig, my signal is excellent. And I
seem to be doing pretty good. I'm not lagging or anything.
So let's see. Oh, they also defended treatment of suspected terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. But remember Andrew Wu. Remember how carefully this was put in place by Rumsfeld and Cheney. So this was an alignment of these politics at the time, these 12 years. So this is very interesting to me, dude. The Heritage Foundation initially developed the Assuring Affordable Health Care for All Americans study, which was released in October 1st, 1989. This became the model for the Romney Care in Massachusetts and Obamacare. That will make people who only want to hear this is evil and go screw yourself, which I'm hearing increasingly from people lately. That should give them pause.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that.
That's a big one. In December of 97, they were against the Kyoto Agreement to curb climate change. Now, this is a big discussion. Do you know that the United States is one of only 2 countries in the entire world who haven't signed on to the U.S. Rights for Children? U.S. sovereignty is a huge deal on both sides of the aisle. Let's just keep this in mind. There is a through thread, of course, with climate change denial, the Kyoto Agreement and all, but remember that U.S. sovereignty, right? The U.S. is not a signatory of the International Criminal Court. So my only point is it's not unprecedented for the United States.
Hopefully people understand, probably the underlying. I hope people understand why that is the case.
Please go ahead, sir.
I mean, it's one of those, because like you said, it's sovereignty. If you sign on to these things, you then become holden to a world court. The world court can come in and dictate exactly what happens to you. So you just take anything. It's like they just come in and they're like, nope, we're going to come in, and they take. People are like, well, it's not a bad thing. I'm like, it isn't when you think about it on paper, but when it actually happens in reality, you're going to be screaming a lot when you have a UN vehicle pulling up to your front door, yanking you out because
Yeah.
you've done something like, I mean, because as scary as it is, one of the things that Charles said is actually illegal in the UK. It's viewed as hate speech. Yeah, anytime you say something demeaning about somebody,
yes, right. Yeah.
yeah. So if that's the thing, and that's what I said, you're like, well, why don't we do it? Well, that's why. It's because our system allows that. Charles has the right, has the constitutional right to do that. The world, you go outside of our borders, guess what? You're getting locked up for hate speech. Like I said, that's one of the things we'll get to in this part. That's part of this thing too. Project 2025.
Yeah. So we're moving along pretty quickly here. Charles is watching the show through YouTube, so no Facebook people are seeing it. But Craig, I'm amazed that people who comment on Facebook, I do not see their comments when we're live. I only see them after because they're being hidden or suppressed. So there is a version of that. There is a gatekeeping version where they put it on you and they go, oh, this is controversial. Do you want to okay this? And then they're going, okay, they okayed that crap. So it's a big game. So let's keep going because we're moving quickly here. So Trump at the debate. Trump says, I haven't read it. I don't want to read it. Purposefully, I'm not going to read it. Here's another factoid, folks. The Heritage Foundation did not support Trump's primary run. They called him a clown. They said that he had no policy ideas. They said that he was not a conservative. This guy was not their choice. They don't like each other. And you know how Trump reacts when someone doesn't like him, calls him bad names and all that. But
that golf game's better.
When he gets the nomination, no other conservative think tanks want to touch this dude. So the Heritage Foundation goes, well, crap, he's probably going to be president. If he is, we got to be involved. That's where they start to get involved. They took lead on the Trump transition team. They put in 66 Heritage Foundation employees and alumni in the initial hire. They took 200 people from the HF database, and I'll talk about the database in a little bit. That's where Betty DeVos came from. That's where Rick Perry and Energy came from. That's where AG Jeff Sessions came from, and other cabinet positions. So, of course, you despise this guy. You dislike him, but he got elected president, and he's the guy now. So you got to be at the table with him. January of 2018. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. No. I was just agreeing with you.
So January of 2018, Heritage Foundation claims that Trump administration execs, you get it, 64. So 2/3 just seems to be their number of 334 proposed policies. Now, how many of these was Trump aware of? Who the hell even knows? How much? You remember his 180 days, Craig? I was waiting for them to carry him out in the straitjacket. It was a mess. Yeah.
It was like every time it's like, it was like one after another. And that's when we get to it. That's one of the things that is pretty big in this new proposal.
Okay, cool. I'm working on this pretty quickly. Working through this pretty quickly. Okay, so let's talk about the president. Craig, that's who that gentleman is behind us, right? It's Kevin Roberts. Yeah. So October 2021, Kevin Roberts. Now, this guy didn't come out of nowhere. This guy, and this should illuminate some things for you guys, he led a think tank called the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He was a member of Governor Abbott's COVID-19 task force. So this guy knows how to do conservative. He knows how to do it. Now, here's where it gets really thorny with Kevin Roberts. He's one of these guys that just always says what's on his mind.
Yeah.
He said that he saw the role of the Heritage Foundation as institutionalizing Trumpism. What the hell is Trumpism? Be serious. If you're going to be serious, if you're going to try to control the fate of the country, be serious. So they unveiled this in April 2023, like I said. Summer 2024, so now we're really catching up. We're getting current here. He goes on Steve Bannon's War Room. Now, Steve wasn't the host. U.S. Representative Dave Bratt from Virginia was the host because Bannon was on a 4-month prison term for contempt of Congress for not cooperating with the January 6th investigation. Craig, that's in a month, 2 weeks before the election. We're doing January 6th. He says that Republicans are in the process of taking this country back. well, what is Kamala and Tim Walz and all their warriors saying? We're going to take the country back.
Yeah, let's take it
kinda what
back.
they're
We're going to
saying.
turn
We're
the
gonna take it
page.
back. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going to swing the pendulum. We're going to undo. So this is not untoward. But then he says this. He says, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows us to be. Them's fighting words, dude. I just don't see how that's useful.
No, it's not. It's inflammatory to, try to get people to say stuff that's stupid. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
No, but I'm glad you said something about the pendulum, because that's one of the things. It's Tanya talked about the Lincoln Project. That's one of the things we need to talk about. The Brookings Institute, Lincoln Project. I mean, those are things that we could definitely, make.
You want to
into
do a
shows
show
too.
like on think tanks?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we definitely could,
Yeah.
because that's,
Okay.
that's one of those things. It's like, because Joey referenced the Overton window. The problem that's going on with politics right now is everybody keeps doing it. Everybody keeps pulling that pendulum. You want to pull it far to the left, and then it comes back. Like Project 25 wants to pull it farther to the right side. Well,
Mhm.
the problem is the further and further this swings back and forth, the more drastic changes you get, and eventually somebody is going to seize that pendulum.
Mhm.
And that's the problem. We don't know what side is going to take it. And this is the thing. This is what's so scary, and this is why people really need to drop the team thing and start looking at, what's constitutional, what's something like that, and quit looking at, D good, R bad, R good, D bad. And that's why we're in the place that we're in right now.
I agree.
Strictly because of that.
And I also think we have a serious problem with anybody but.
Oh yeah,
That's this country's politics. Anybody
that's how you shame people into voting for somebody that they don't want to vote for.
Yeah.
If you don't vote for this person, it's a vote for the other person.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. We had a really good viable alternative. It's called RFK. Like I said, that could have come in, and like I said, it would have been, for a lot of people, he was a viable alternative. Like I said, whether or not you agree with him, but the problem is everybody was like, if you vote for him, it's a vote against this person. And that's not how it should be. It needs to be. I mean, where do you think Lincoln came from?
Yeah.
Lincoln was a third party.
Yep.
And the end of slavery came out of that.
Yeah. I mentioned when I left the Republicans and went independent, I voted for Ross Perot. If you go back and you watch videos of Ross Perot, everything that he said would happen in the fire sailing of this country happened under Clinton.
Yeah, he would have been a great president.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they
it would have been
family.
Yeah, it would have been boring as hell fireside chats. We're just like, man, look at this pie chart. It's just, but I mean, it's like, yeah, he knew what he was talking about.
Hey, does anybody know about this, or please tell us more? King, your comment that I just put on the screen.
Oh yeah, that's the Time magazine one. That was a really bad timing. It was like 4 days before the second assassination attempt. It shows Trump stuck in a sand trap in a golf cart looking back. Yeah, it's one of those things people are looking at. It's like, what are the odds that they would put something like that he's stuck looking back as, we have another assassination attempt.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm not saying RFK was the perfect guy. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he was one of those that he was definitely an alternative for people over these things, but he was basically railroaded. He wasn't allowed in debates. He wasn't allowed in anything. So most people didn't get a chance to hear his policies.
Yeah. I'm with Straw Dog. He picked a viable running mate. He picked a Silicon Valley billionaire to fund his thing. And I was like, I'm out of here. That's not, because we're doing Teal in 2 weeks. We're doing Teal and yeah. So, well, Homeland Security at its finest, part of Project 2025 is to dismantle the Department of Homeland Security, which hasn't been around since the founding fathers by a long shot. That's a fairly new entity there.
9/11 was the creation of that department.
Yeah, it's interesting watching X-Files and Fringe and how they moved over from talk about the FBI and CIA to Department of Homeland Security. So there you go. So it's
anybody wants a little string to pull and go down that rabbit hole and stuff, look at when they started developing the Department of Homeland Security.
Nice. Hey,
it wasn't after.
Here. No. Think tanks anytime you use the word homeland, my eyebrow sort of raises, because there was a certain fascist government that liked to use the word homeland. I was shocked when they put the word homeland in there. Think tanks, and what was the other episode we're going to do after the first of the year? Do you remember? Does anybody remember, folks?
The was it the STI?
Yeah. Star Wars, Strategic Defense Initiative. Thank you. Okay, let's keep going here because we're going a little sideways, which is great. So, but I just want to make sure. Okay, so the Second American Revolution, immunity from prosecution is vital to ensure the president won't have to second guess, triple guess every decision they're making in their official capacity. This is thorny. There's probably its own show. Not that I would want to do it, but that's what they're saying. Give this guy a lot more presidential power so has more freedom to implement the 2/3 of our policy. So everybody wants a powerful president when they agree, when they think he's their guy or he is going to push their agendas. So there you go. I just want to give you something really quick here. When you're so then he says, take the power back from the elites and the despotic bureaucrat. I call it the corporate oligarchy, military, media, industrial intelligence complex, the comic. So I'm all for that. Let's get rid of these guys, but I don't think it's going to happen. No. But anyway, that's what he says. So the playbook, their implementation, which is not going to be public. This is the thing that the playbook is given to the president in private. That's cool too. Whatever. Implementation of the unitary executive theory. What does this mean? It means that the executive branch should have much more power. This is nothing new. Craig, you probably know this. Alexander Hamilton wanted to call George Washington the exalted emperor and give him the job for life.
Yeah. I mean, they just broke free from that, and they were like, "Let's do it again." Let's
do it again. And it was him who said, "I got crap to do." Don't do this to me.
You're just like, dude, what did we just fight? These last few years over. It's like you want to do it again. Bonk.
Yeah. I'm Team Jefferson. I am not Team Hamilton. So anyway, there is a tool that presidents exercise as part of their unitary executive theory in action, and that is called the executive order. So, first of all, I didn't realize, or I wasn't conscious of, how many of our presidents since Eisenhower have been two-term presidents. So this country does kind of get into okay, cool, hasn't screwed anything up, we'll vote for him again. So we've had a lot of two-term presidents. So let me throw you some numbers here. Ike, 484 executive orders. He was a two-term president. That's pretty high. JFK in 1+, 214. Clinton, two-term, 364. So that's pretty high. W, 291 in 2 years. So a lot less executive orders, although everybody says that the Republicans are so much more heavy-handed. Actually, Reagan was 381. So Reagan, we know, right? He created a whole zeitgeist. That's why he was there. Do you know who? This is crazy. I asked Tanya tonight. She didn't get it. Do you know who the single-term president with the most executive orders was?
I want to say Trump, but it's Obama then.
It's Carter. No, well, Obama was a two-term president. Jimmy Carter issued 320 executive orders, where Reagan did 381 in 2 years. Super interesting. Nixon in 1+, 346. Biden lags behind all of them. Well, also because he hasn't really worked in about 18 months. That could be why. He hasn't really done anything in a long time, but he's at 142. Trump was at 220. Kind of high for a one-term president, but not shocking. Obama was 276 in 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not the topic, but that's one thing I want people to consider too, like what you just said. With all the talk, like forcing Biden to, relinquish the campaign, do that stuff. Why is nobody talking about, who's governing?
Yeah, I know.
That's the scary part. It's like nobody's talking about, well, actually, who's wielding the pen right now, and the phone. And it's like if he's not even fit to campaign, how, why is he still sitting behind the desk?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the questions I've never asked. But yeah, getting back on the thing, you brought it up. like one of the things is like in this Project 25, they really want to do a lot more concentrating of powers into the executive branch through this thing.
Mhm.
And the part that's scary about that is I think a lot of people just have so busy they've forgotten. But that was one of the biggest things from Obama. He didn't do, it's like it wasn't that he did like this massive quantity, but the ones that he did were so dramatic in what they changed. It was through regulations. And so what these regulatory, this gave departments, and this is one of the things that Project 25 says, they want to rein in these departments. But this gave these departments authority to act past Congress without congressional oversight. They could actually, basically, in fact, create their own law and do it through a regulation. And so through a regulation, they could come in and do the stuff, because this is what the EPA created, regulation. Never went through Congress. And that was one of the things that's scary, is if we don't keep, that's the whole part of the checks and balances. But right now, the executive branch already currently it is weighted heavily to the executive branch over the executive and legislative. Now they basically neutered the judicial. The judicial is really become the small of the three.
But Charles says here, especially since the Supremes are singing presidential immunity.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things too. I was on the fence with that one too, because a president has got to be able to execute the job without fear of reciprocity, afterwards, because, hindsight's 2020. You don't always know that the person that you're having a meeting with is going to turn out, because it's one of those things, you rely on other staff. So it's like one of those, if you go in this and you find out that let's say Biden goes for a meeting and he ends up finding out that this is somebody thing, that shouldn't immediately become something that he's prosecuted over. If it was intentional, also, yes, absolutely. I mean, there still needs to be things, but that was a problem with it, is they were so desperate to prosecute former President Trump that they were willing to throw away civil liberties like crazy. They're like, yeah, just do this, because they wanted blood so bad. And it's one of those things. I told people, you have to be careful, because here's what you do. It's like Charles is upset about that, but here's what's going to happen. That doesn't happen. Guess who's coming after Biden as soon as he's out? This is going to be, a bloodbath to the other side. And that's why it's so dangerous to go down this path, because now every single political candidate is going to be up for grabs as soon as they're done. It's going to be a free for all.
Well, look, after Biden, it was out that his faculties are no longer there. He's not running for president. He's not really competent to be president right now. That's when Hunter Biden all of a sudden took the plea deal. So you already saw a shifting of sands. Yeah. So
he knew what was coming.
Yeah. Pence did sell out and turn on Trump. I really thought that they were going to declare Trump insane or drive him crazy and put Pence in his place. I really thought that's what was going to happen in the 180 days. And maybe that was the plan.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I was surprised too that they didn't try that. I mean, it's just, that's what, like, the article I posted, they broke it into three categories that I really liked. And that's why I wanted to give them credit. They did this, concentrating the powers to the executive branch, long-term conservative priorities, that's been the case since 73. That's not, more. That's
their wish list.
And they want a more leaning towards a religious agenda. They want, but some of those things can be just like anything. They can be taken too far. It's just, we have to, it's everything within reason, because it's, once again, freedom of speech is critical. It's like, because people reject this one, but we talked about before the show, one of the things they want to do is restrict pornography, and they want to do this stuff. Yes, we can all agree, child porn, no place for that at all. But what a consenting adult wants to engage in, that's the thing. If we restrict that, then it flips around. It's going to be this, once again with the pendulum, who seizes power is going to determine everything. I mean, everybody wants Trump, that side wants Trump, hauled out to jail, but you're going to be screaming when it's on the other side, if somebody like the Heritage Foundation, gets a majority of this stuff passed through, and all of a sudden your side is being hauled into jail and stuff like this, it's going to be screaming about rights and rights and rights. And it's going to be, you're not going to listen to the people that have been saying, don't do this.
Right.
This is, you have to measured approaches. You can't do these drastic swings, because the Brookings Institute, if a lot of this passes, is what the Brookings Institute is going to do in the next round. They're going to pull that thing all the way as far as they can to the left.
Right. And the WEF has their agenda, right? In line with the UN, which they own, Agenda 30, which we did that. So we're just giving equal time here to looking at these things. So there you go. So let's see here.
That's one of the hot topics. I don't know if you want to cover that in this show. What Tanya brought up.
Yeah. Okay. So let me keep going here. Steve Banyan says to the New York Times, Roberts as a potential Trump chief of staff. Also, wish list. This is all wish list stuff. Pornography is because you have ultra conservative, very wealthy Christian guys who are saying, put this in there. We want it in there. And what ultimately happens, the Heritage Foundation says, we proposed it. They didn't accept it. I think everybody needs to keep some of this stuff in mind. And Trump would not be the guy to ban pornography. That's absurd. No. Somebody put Stormy Daniels in the chat room. There you go. So here's, these things are so, Craig, J.D. Vance is very close pals with Kevin Roberts, which is another piece of the puzzle. We're going to talk about another in 2 weeks, that J.D. Vance is a Peter Thiel boy. He's pals with Roberts. As a matter of fact, he penned the foreword to Roberts' new book, which is set to be published was set to be published this month, but it's going to be postponed until after the election because it's so inflammatory. Yet J.D. Vance penned the opening. So you can see why J.D. Vance is on the ticket.
Yeah.
Because he knows these uber powerful guys.
Well, and that's like, because you brought that up too, that's one of the things that this Project 25 talks about, that they think one of the mistakes of the first term was that he didn't understand who he needed to have in place, what he needed to be. And so they're like, these, it kind of lays out, these are the kind of people that should be in charge of these departments, to help rein these things in. The limit, like I said, we don't have enough time to go into every single detail, but a lot of these ones, it talks about, Department of Education. It's one of those, severely limiting, their scope and taking it to where it's not this overarching bureaucracy that just sucks money out of the treasury. And that's what they're talking about. These things is where one thing that a lot of people brought up, it was on page, I think 750, somewhere between 750 and 754. One thing that was
chapter and verse.
Yeah, they brought up the natural disaster thing. They were talking about how, if this goes through, natural disaster funding is going to be cut off. It doesn't say that anywhere. What it's saying is that funding has to be directed through the appropriate channels to reduce waste. I mean, does nobody remember the vast pallet farm of water bottles in Puerto Rico that just rotted because they weren't getting handed out? So that obviously the aid funds were not being used in the proper way. So this proposal says we need to eliminate this waste and try to get it to where resources go where they need to go. Right. But as I said, I didn't know, where does it say that disaster funding is cut off? Right. But that's what gets spread out there. And what you talked about, it's like the misinformation part of it and stuff. It's like, there's plenty to debate over whether you like the policy or not without making stuff up. And that's unfortunately what it is. It's just, this is one of those things that's just definitely made up.
Yeah. Maria has an interesting proposal there. I guess we could do that. That would be fun sometime.
Yeah, so, that would be kind of like just a blind thing to see, see if anybody can figure out who it, attribute it to. Yeah.
We'll keep that. Let's definitely keep that in mind.
Maybe on the 50th episode.
Conservative. I think we No, have we scheduled the 50th? I'm not sure.
I don't think we have yet.
We're running out of time here. Conservative Republicans are caught unprepared for 2016, which you said that, Craig. So Bannon's been working for years. I've been tracking this. Bannon was putting people boots on the ground because they're like, if he gets in, we got to start from day one. We got to have a much, much better first 180 days. So they've created a conservative LinkedIn to bring Mr. and Mrs. Swift to Washington, and they will train these people at the Presidential Administration Academy. So if you're a local conservative politician, if you're someone who has really strong ideas that go with them, they will teach you how to work in the administration, and then they'll place you there. I don't really think
it was
that,
yeah, I mean, it was, let's be honest. It was entertaining. I mean, great for Saturday Night Live thing, but Spicer, that was not the guy to make as your spokesman. Yeah. I mean, he was a fireball. I mean, it was great for entertainment, but that's not the guy that you want as your spokesman. I mean, he was she really nailed that role too. She that movable podium, chewing the gum.
That's funny. And didn't last very long. Couldn't stomach it, really.
I think, wasn't it like 8 months they made?
Yeah, I mean, just couldn't stomach it. I mean, that's a horrible job. I mean, I'm sure Jen Psaki went to network news because it paid a lot better. But I don't think she had the stomach where Jean-Pierre loves it. She'll play that game all day. Peter Ducey with the Daily Dance with her and Ducey. I like to watch those clips. So, and the Heritage Foundation is not always steadfast either. They do move their position. They created the model that became Obamacare, but they did not back Obamacare. I'm guessing part of it was because of the mandate, which I disagreed with. That cost me thousands of dollars, the mandate. And they said that it would collapse without the mandate, and then Trump removed the mandate, and it didn't collapse. So I'd like my $2,500 back, because Tanya had surgery that cost us $40,000 that I couldn't afford insurance for, on top of being penalized $2,500 for not having insurance. How the hell is that fair? So anyway, so May 2022, Heritage Action, which is the Heritage Foundation's political activation arm, opposed the $40 billion military aid package for Ukraine, reversing their previous position. So they can be fluid. They can look at the circumstances. So Craig, now we've teased it, but here we are, Project 2025, where we talked a lot about it. 922 page plan. This wasn't written overnight, guys.
I mean, they even tweeted the Project 2025 back in July 5th. And their actual quote was, "As we've been saying for more than 2 years now, Project 2025 does not speak for any candidate or campaign."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I said, like, people say this was all Trump. I'm like, no, they've said this is not tailored. They're just looking for the person who they think can do their, this policies and push it forward.
Wow. I'll go you one better, Craig. I think based on, what we said in the earlier part of the show, they don't like him. And they would rather have somebody that would play ball better with them and not give them such agita, to use an Italian
JD
word.
Vance.
Well,
that'd be setting up JD for
Let's be careful what we would see.
I mean, that's you could see it. I mean, that seems to be one of their handpicked guys. So I mean, it's one of those. It's like, did they move the chess pieces at the right time?
So just real quickly, I was having a conversation the other day with someone who said, well, what if it's their own guys that's trying to take their guy out at rallies and on golf courses? Okay, I'm trying to not get us penalized here.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, if that was the case, Vance moves up to presidential slot. They put Vikram Ramaswamy. He and Vance went to Yale graduate school together. I think they're godfathers of each other's kids. I mean, they're tight. Anyway, just postulating.
Yeah, Maria, no, nobody. I know of. I don't think anybody's voted strictly because of who's VP, unless of course you're doing it for a simple. You're trying to tick off a box.
But isn't how? Oftentimes that's how he's really strong in the string. I mean, look, my understanding,
they're trying to bring in a certain vote, possibly.
When John McCain showed up at the vice president meeting that the RNC set up for him, he was told it was Sarah Palin, and he was blindsided by that.
Yeah, because they were going, this will help lock in the women vote, for us. That we need that female, demographic, so yeah, and I mean, so I think in a way they're doing it to hopefully, but I don't think anybody's directly voted, just for the president because, I like the vice president, so yeah, I'll vote for him. Yeah, no.
But how many people, like RFK Jr., we talked about it. Like the minute he picked the ex-wife of the Google guy, Serge, whatever the hell his name is, I was done. Or you couldn't take McCain seriously with Sarah Palin next to him. And look at Dan Quayle. That guy was a 14-carat moron. And who were some of the other really? Ross Perot. It was really hard to take him. It was an old, like, doddery admiral he picked for like a vice president, and we were all like, "Are you serious? Like, how can I take you?" So vice president.
Charles is correct. It's because a lot of them are. It's like who knew about Tim Walz until like I said, very few people knew who he was. And it's like if you weren't in Minnesota, you didn't really know who this guy was.
Right. Yeah, but they tick boxes and they're battleground people, and it's exactly what it is. So I think it does. Okay, fair enough. So's Lauren Boebert, but I don't know, though, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, I can't believe I said that. Okay, so Mandate for Leadership is more than 350 leading conservatives from 45 plus right of center organizations. 140 of the 350 worked in the Trump administration. Because he drew the conservatives like flies, even though a lot of people said he wasn't even a true conservative. Just to loop back, Tanya, there's Reagan Republicans, there's Lincoln Republicans. A lot of people don't recognize the Republican Party. Whether you were a Lincoln Republican, whether you were a Reagan Republican, they don't recognize the Republican Party, and they want to go back to these solid conservative values. Would you agree with that, Craig?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So here's a couple of the key players, guys. You can go, and of course the director was Paul Dans. When this whole thing blew up in his face, he stepped down. He's the former chief of staff at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. You will see a lot of these people were directly responsible for hiring like 4,000 bureaucrats that work for the Trump administration. That's who you want in. The guys who are going to put in your people. Think about conservative LinkedIn. Think about the Presidential Administration Academy. But again, Craig, none of this is surprising to me. If I have a think tank that is well-funded and my people want certain things, I want somebody who's going to, I want my people in place to make sure that also proves that they're not pals with Trump. They didn't leave it with Trump.
There was one policy thing in there that they wanted to do. The logistics alone of that being going thing, I don't know if anybody's really taken the time to think about it. Removing a lot of these people that are basically like hirings and just you're an employee of the federal government and making them a political appointments.
Yeah.
So as either Trump or Harris come into office, can you imagine them having to appoint thousands and thousands of people into these different roles? I mean, that's not something that just, well, they were talking like the Department of Justice is like 10,000.
Oh,
and so that's one of the ones. Yeah. So that's one of the things like they're talking about. So can you imagine just as you're coming in, that's not something you just do on day one or day two. You have to have that all lined up, to go through. I mean, this isn't something that just can be done like that. I mean, that's like I said, that is definitely one. I don't know if that would even be feasible to really do that a political point every 4 years.
No. And that's why they really don't want to be caught out. Jessica, before I take that off screen, Jessica's my guest next week, and I got called out for my Boebert. There you go. And she's my guest next week, so that will be fun. Actually, it's going to be fun, guys. And she wrote this awesome novel about Appalachian witchcraft. It's really cool, the Rhododendron Society. So there's the plug for next week. Russ Vaught drafted The Final Pillar. He was an RNC platform writer. He's heavily involved. John McEntee. This is my little nugget. John McEntee was President Trump's White House Presidential Personnel Office guy. He was a senior advisor responsible for 4,000 hires, and Peter Thiel gave him $1.5 million to create The Right Stuff, a conservative dating app.
Yeah.
$1.5 million to get those conservatives together and procreating. It sounds like the Nazi SS, dude, which I told Tanya I wasn't going to say that, but I said it. You want these like minds together procreating. The church does it all the time. Why are you not supposed to use contraceptives? Because you're creating more people who are part of the club. But that's pretty crazy. 1.5 mil, Mr. Thiel. Thank you. So we'll mention that again in 2 weeks. Spencer Chretien, Chretien, former Trump special assistant, young, shiny looking Republican kid, associate director of the Presidential Transition Project right now. So like we've talked about, Craig, this is all about making sure that they're boots on the ground, ready to go and maximize that first 180 days. Preparing private 180-day agenda these guys are involved in. So July 30th, this whole thing blows up, even though it's been public since April 2023. Some media got a hold of it. Danz resigns. Trump pushes back on it, of course. He not only resigns from Project 2025, he leaves the Heritage Foundation, and Roberts is now in charge. And then I think most of what I have, Craig, we've probably already covered, except we didn't talk about one thing. I added a lot of... What's that?
I said one of the big topics. That was one of the things we didn't talk about.
I don't know if this is that one. The intelligence community. I added a lot of academic journals that have to do with intelligence, counterintelligence, that kind of thing. And they talk a lot about the weaponizing of the intelligence community because Trump was, enemies with these guys. The Heritage Foundation calls the FBI a bloated, arrogant, increasingly lawless organization. They basically want to have a new church committee, which was the Senate committee in 1975 that first started calling out big CIA excesses. Craig, which quite frankly, you and I have been calling out through the whole life of this show.
Yeah.
So I wonder about the intelligence community, the CIA, all of that kind of stuff. We talked about the economic side of it. We talked about dismantling the Department of Ed. Only thing I want to contribute to that is that remember that conservative Reagan Republicans are about smaller government and more power to the states. It is the 50 United States, but they all have very separate personalities. So sometimes I see the sense in that. They want to, of course, revamp immigration. They have very strong opinions about what's gone on at the border the past 3.5 years. They want to dismantle Department of Homeland Security, which hasn't been around that long, was an artifact of other things. Look up the Patriot Act, guys, because the word patriot is an acronym. It's an acronym. This was all put. They want a strong, assertive U.S. foreign policy. That all makes sense. They question multilateral institutions agreement. We covered all this, Craig.
It's
I have one more
freedom.
thing about where their money comes from, but I want to give you time to talk about some of the hot buttons you wanted to talk about.
Well, it's like I said, I didn't know if you want to talk about the big one. Starts with letter A.
We don't have to. That's the umbrella heading. I put it under the umbrella heading of these are heavily Christian people who are anti-woke in their agenda.
That works because it's one of those. Just because one of those things like they kind of reinforce that part where it was in the thing where they talk about it was kicking it back to the states was like the first step.
Yeah.
So that's so those things they we talked about a lot of people really harp on the funding side, and that's always been a big thing. There's so much waste. The government is not about efficiency in any way. I mean, everybody talks about why don't we have money for veterans? Well, maybe we don't need to give $1.5 million to some research thing to put shrimp on a treadmill to see how they do, with this thing. I go, that's money that could be funding a health clinic a place for them to live. And that's the type of things. And so when they talk about this, but everybody freaks out because that money has been lumped under arts, grants and education grants and stuff, which it's done intentionally for that reason. Because if you want to restrict those, well, how dare Joey be against education? He doesn't want to educate you. And you're like, no, I want kids to be educated. I just don't want to find out if shrimp like to walk on a treadmill. I mean, how about we don't have this kind of money? I mean, that's the type of thing. That's how the government works. And these kind of policies, like I said, they Overton window it. They go to, when they're like, we're going to abolish all this thing, and people like freak out, like, oh my God, I'm like, it's not going to happen. Congress would not approve this. I go, you can't unilaterally just step up and say the Department of Homeland Security no longer exists. Scratch. I go, it has to go through Congress.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance it wouldn't. But if you could get it to where, okay, we're not going to eliminate it, but we're going to rein them in, then you've already, that's kind of like they said, excuse me.
Yep.
Hiccups.
Okay. I'd like to wrap this up.
Yeah. That's why I said all publicly funded groups hate oversight. Nobody's going to vote themselves out of a paycheck.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. So on one hand, they reject the scientific consensus on climate change, but on the other hand, they're funded by ExxonMobil, the 8th largest corporation in the world, with over $413 billion in revenue. So some of this is kowtowing to the guys paying their bills.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
that's the public face. So they want to deregulate the energy center. They want to keep fossil fuels. We have a lot of listeners from a certain state that that's their blood, fossil fuels. So that gets complicated, and oppose stringent environmental regulations. So, all right, thank you guys for.
I appreciate everybody watching.
So next week, Jessica Knuckles. So something completely different. Please tune in. The Rhododendron Society. It's a wonderful book. It's her debut novel. We're going to be talking shop a little, but we're also going to be talking about the book Appalachian Folk Magic, Magical Realism. It's real good stuff.
Awesome.
So come support a friend of the show. Craig and I will be back in 2 weeks with Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley In-Q-Tel. We've been talking about this in drips and drabs, but this is the guy who made JD Vans. So be curious.
He's kind of like I would say he's like the opposite side of Soros.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. He puts a lot of money in the other side.
Yeah.
Just like Soros does on the left.
But then he has companies that he calls Palantir, which is Sauron's evil eye. Like, you.
Well, I didn't say he was good. I didn't say. I was like, don't say that. No, that wasn't like Soros bad. This guy good. No. He's just, it's the yin and yang. It's Soros and Thiel. They're kind of like the opposites. Soros, absolutely. I just think has a little more money at his disposal.
Yeah, just like Brookings and Heritage Foundation, and just like to every there's got to be balance. The universe does that. It has a way of doing that. Humans do that. No, not
you guys can get this PDF anywhere, so it's one of those things. Yes. Don't listen to ABC, CBS, Fox. It doesn't matter who. Don't listen to them telling you what it is. Just read it. It's really A lot of people say, "Oh, it's dry." It's really not that dry of a read. It's just basically it's not legalese. It's just literally it's just a proposal thing. I mean, it's just reading through it, and it's broken into sections. So it's not just like a run-on sentence. I mean, it tells you all categories. It's chapter. I mean, the PDF is broken down, so you can scroll right to the chapter that you want to look at. So if somebody says something, have that PDF handy, look for it yourself, and see exactly what's in the document, and then you can be like, oh, wow, yeah, they were telling the truth, or well, geez, they lied about that one. I mean, do it yourself. Educate yourself.
Absolutely. We just try to look for gaps in the narrative and fill in those gaps. That's the mission of this show. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, you can easily, with a free Adobe Reader, you can keyword search. I keyword searched Social Security. That's how I know it's in there 9 or 10 times. And it doesn't say anything about cutting. So thank you all. We'll see you again next week. Peace. And we're tripping on to our 50th episode, which might be, I don't know, might be think tanks, might be SDI. I think Craig is going to take us a little bit to put together a really good quiz show. Who said what? That's why I'm saying.
That'll be one. We'll have to come up with a bunch of little things. That'll be one. If we can pull that one off, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'll be cool. And that will take some time to put together to do it justice. So, all right. Good night, everybody. Take care.